la nonna paterna, il padre, la madre, le sorelle, i fratelli. Lei ricorda qualcosa della scomparsa di sua nonna paterna, di suo padre, di sua madre? No, non sta traducendo?
No translation, yeah.
Non c'è traduzione? No, gli dia quello.
What canal?
Che canale è, scusa?
Number 1?
1, 2, allora.
Ah,
Allora può riprendere adesso la traduzione.
okay. Mm-hmm. Oh yes. I never forget the death of my mother and the death of my father and of my grandmother. And in fact, I wrote about the death of the three in my autobiography, because I wrote an autobiography, 3 parts in Arabic. I described in details the 3 events because they were very important events in my life. Though I am a doctor and I have seen a lot of people dying. I've seen a lot of people dying in hospitals. But the death, especially the death of my mother. And I said when my mother died, it was as if the whole city died. It was a great event, very sad event in my life. The same in relation to my father. In relation to my grandmother, she died in the village, so I didn't see her. I was not near her because I was very away from the village. So the effect of her death was not very great on me. But the death of my mother was very great, and also of my father, because I was living with them, and my mother, she had cancer breast, and I was a young doctor at that time. I was taking care of her, so I was with her every day. So it was a big, big tragedy in the family. Her disease and then her death. My father died suddenly with heart attack. He was not sick, just suddenly, like a tree. He fell down. So this was also a shock to me.
In quali anni?
My mother died, in fact, my grandmother died first. This was in 1949, or 50, something like that, 49. And then my mother died in 1958. 58. When my grandmother died, I was in the medical college. When my mother died, I graduated. I was a doctor. My father died 1999. He died 6 months after my mother, because my mother died in September 58. My father died in February. So he was very sad because he was a very good husband, a very good father, and he loved my mother very great. So when she died, he was very sad, and he died after her, 6 months only after her. He was 60 years age. My mother was 45. She was very young. my mother. She was 45 years of age.
Le sorelle e i fratelli sono tutti vivi adesso?
Except my
Fratello.
the brother, yes.
Talat.
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 Yes. He died some years ago, maybe 10 years ago, but all the others are still living.
Talat. E lei di tanto in tanto ha avuto modo di incontrare le sorelle lungo gli anni?
No, not very regular, because my life is very different from them. They are veiled, they are very with the tradition, with the society, but we have a very good relation. But we meet very rare, maybe once a year or every 2 years. So we are not really friends. I choose my friends. I don't believe very much in biological relationship, I choose my friends whom I can talk to, whom I have a relationship. But I love my sisters and brothers.
La venuta in Egitto di Napoleone ha lasciato qualche traccia, a parte tutto quello che lui ha portato via dall'Egitto a Parigi.
In fact, the French cultural invasion to Egypt has an effect, negative and positive. You know, because everything has a negative and positive aspect. So the French, when they came to Egypt, they brought the printing machine with them. The printing machine was a revolution in culture. Because without the printing machine, you don't have books. You know, without printing machine, I will not be here, because you know me through my books. So the printing machine came to Egypt with Napoleon. And many painters, musicians, scientists, artists, they came with Napoleon. The French, we call it the French cultural invasion, because the French did not invade Egypt military like the British, but they came before the British with the printing machine and with all that. So this has positive effect on Egypt and negative effect, because they inhibited the local culture, the Arabic culture. They inhibited that, and they brought the French culture. So Egypt was divided into the local people, the poor local people who do not know French, who cannot mix with the French, who know Arabic only, and poor and not educated. Those were the majority of the people. And then the few minority, the elite. So we have the elite society who mix with the French and who deal with writing, artists, and art. So this created more or less a division in the society. It helped creating the upper classes in Egypt, the educated upper classes, and increased the gap between the educated and the non-educated. And when the British came, they increased this gap. between the elite, the very, very elite who work with the foreigners, and the bulk of the Egyptian people.
Infatti lei per 3 anni, dall'età di 5 all'età di 8 anni, aveva studiato la lingua francese.
Yes, this was the effect of Napoleon.
Un effetto di Napoleone.
The family, because the family of my mother, they were more or less elite, upper class. They all speak French at home, and Arabic and French. My aunt, of course, their French was not very good, but they spoke Arabic French. And also because my grandmother, the family of my mother, they have Turkish blood. So there was a mixture of culture, Turkish culture, French culture in the family of my mother. But the family of my father, they were the peasant, poor Egyptian, very rooted in the village.
Quindi gli inglesi invece hanno diciamo, avuto un regime più militare che culturale.
Yeah, exactly. The British had effect economic, military in the yes, military and economic. The French affected the culture and the law. In fact, in Egypt, adopted the French law.
Diritto napoleonico.
Yes, the French law. Well, the Egyptian government adopted up till today in Egypt. Some of the items of the law are French, up till to now.
Quindi diciamo che l'impostazione giuridica è quella inquisitoria, non quella anglosassone che diciamo affida tutto al contraddittorio, al dibattimento. Non è la procedura inquisitoria, non la procedura accusatoria, cioè metodo napoleonico inquisitorio anziché metodo anglosassone del processo dibattimentale libero.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what you are saying. There is always this difference between the British and the French conception of justice and
Era la biblioteca più importante di cultura egiziana e di tutto il Mediterraneo.
yes, it was burnt, and in history they didn't know who burnt the Alexandria Library. And now the Norwegian, yes, some say it was the Arabs, some say it's, we don't know, the Christian, Jew, because Alexandria was a mixture of many, many groups. It was very, very healthy because there was a lot of multi-languages, multiculturalism, etc., multi-political ideas. So Alexandria was the bride of the Mediterranean in ancient Egypt. And also there were many women philosophers like Hypatia. You know Hypatia, the woman, the philosopher. She lived in Alexandria and she had many books in the ancient Alexandria Library. And they killed her. They killed her in Alexandria, and they dragged her body in the streets because she was a philosopher. And when they speak about philosophers, it's very rare when they mention Hypatia, because she was a woman. And then the library was burned, and the whole cultural activity was almost killed in Alexandria. But recently, some years ago, the Norwegian, with the Egyptians, the Norwegians financed the new library in Alexandria. Have you visited that? Have you visited the library? Anybody who went to Alexandria recently? It's a very big, big library with a lot of books, and it's very book. But unfortunately, the cultural life did not come back, because it depends on Cairo. Because when you have a very Cairo and Alexandria, you know, Alexandria and Cairo is the capital. In ancient Egypt, Alexandria was almost the capital, the center of culture and everything. Now it is Cairo, the center of culture, of politics, of economics, of everything. So when there is a backward movement in Cairo, when there is a fundamentalist movement, when there is a struggle against the intellectuals, when intellectuals go to court or are killed, so Alexandria follow Cairo, Alexandria follow Cairo. So now we have a big, big, big library in Alexandria, but it is not as active as the ancient one, because this depends on the whole society. You need a whole cultural activity, a whole progressive ideas, so that the library work. The Library of Alexandria cannot work alone in isolation from the whole society. And because we are going backward culturally, politically, economically, since the Sadat period, so the Library of Alexandria, you see a big, big building, but then the activity is not big.
E Cleopatra?
Well, people in the West, they love Cleopatra. Yeah, she was a very important personality, very important personality in history in relation to the Egypt-Greek love, the love relation between Egypt and Greek, and her personality as a political figure. She was strong, but she was beautiful. But we cannot really reduce, because that's more or less putting stress on Cleopatra. You know, when I meet people, you are from the country of Cleopatra. And sometimes they say Nefertiti. You are from the country of Nefertiti, you know. So, but she was a great woman, yeah.
Noi non stiamo a ricostruire le varie fasi della storia egizia, che sicuramente un giorno o l'altro potrà essere sempre scritta e riscritta. E sono sempre i vincitori a scrivere la storia, e quindi bisogna sempre leggere invece i testi, gli scritti, i documenti. Oggi sono molte le donne in Egitto a scrivere, sono molte scrittrici.
Oh, yeah. many. But before I go to women writers, I would like to say that the word history means his story. His history was written with men, because we live in a patriarchal society, so history was written. That's why women in ancient Egypt were ignored. That's why up till today, history is written from the eye of historians are mainly men, and they have the same mentality. And with the women liberation movement all over the world that started at the beginning of the 20th century, we use now the word her story, instead of history, because history means his story. So we say her story. Her story means heresy. Heresy, heresy, you go to court because you are heretic. So you see how the evolution of the patriarchal system changed history and ignored women, ignored the voice of women and the story of women in history. But if I come now to women writers in Egypt, we have hundreds of women writers. But because the writers are not the same, we have writers, men and women writers, who write for the government. They support the government, they write for the government, they are in the media, they publish in the big publishing government institutions in Egypt. They have a lot of success in the media everywhere. Those are the establishment writers, and they are women and men. And then we have the dissident writers, like myself, dissident writers, and there are younger generations who are dissident writers, like my daughter, for instance, Mona Helmi, my daughter, and her generation. There are some dissident young women writers who are fighting against the patriarchal capitalist society, etc. Those are the minority group. The majority are with the government. And in the middle, we have the third type of writers, men and women, who are not dissident and not with the government. And they say, art for art. They live in ivory tower, and they say, literature should be separated from politics. So we shouldn't speak about politics. And they write. So there are different types of writers.
Ci sono anche donne artiste dissidenti, pittrici, scultrici.
Yes, of course. There are dissidents, musicians, painters, sculptors, all types of expression, poets, all types. There are dissidents, but they are few and not recognized. For instance, who are recognized here? The painters, the women who paint, and they don't have any conflict with the government. So they make exhibitions, the government helped them to be there. But the painters here, dissident, even very few people know about them, and they struggle to be there, to exist. Like also the writers, they have a lot of difficulty to publish. They cannot publish except very, very rare and with a lot of struggle. When we established our association, the Arab Women, we started a publishing house It was called the Publishing House of the Arab Women's Solidarity Association. And we started to publish dissident young writers and painters and all that, and we tried to encourage them because that's the only way how they can be recognized.
Internet è libera? Cioè le scrittrici, gli scrittori possono pubblicare su internet, sul loro sito, qualsiasi cosa? Anche cose che non siano amate dal governo?
That's the miracle of the computer. Yes, the net, the internet became now an outlet for the dissident thinkers and writers and artists in general, in Egypt and in other countries. But the government is trying to control, but they cannot. The government is trying. They put some people in the prison, the bloggers. They put some of them in prison, maybe last year or the year before. So the government is trying to supervise the net. But of course they cannot. It's very, very difficult. And now demonstrations in Egypt are organized through the net also. When I open my computer, I see advertisement about demonstration. We should go and be there. So the net reach many, many people in a very short time.
Non c'è stato un accordo tra le compagnie che forniscono i software internet e il governo egiziano per il controllo dei dati e per trasmettere alcuni nominativi, alcuni dati al governo? Con questo accordo, per esempio, è avvenuto in Cina.
Maybe they are doing the same. Maybe. I don't know. I am not sure. But I think there must be, because in Egypt, the government has a big control over everything, over the media, over the companies, so the government has a great power in Egypt, great power. So I expect that they have agreements with companies, yeah.
Allora, ritorniamo un po' alla storia di lei come medico. Quali sono state le cose più inquietanti in cui si è imbattuta lungo questa esperienza?
The most, troubling. In fact, because I was a chest physician, a chest surgeon, and then chest physician, I was living among poor men and women who had tuberculosis, chest, pulmonary tuberculosis. And this disease is very infectious. I can be infected. I was about to be infected and to have tuberculosis because I was living in the hospital with patients who were tuberculous, and they used to make X-ray, to X-ray the lungs in a small room with the patients. So I started to cough, and my father was, at that time, he was living, and he told me, Nawal, you should leave this chest diseases. And he pushed me to change from chest to other domains. So I remember I had very difficult life in these few years in hospitals with tuberculosis patients, and also the agony. I never forget the patients, the workers who were poor, and they were infected by tuberculosis because they didn't have enough food and they were exhausted. They worked many hours, so they had the disease. And they came to me to the hospital, and I have to x-ray them, to give them medicine. And they go back to work and reinfected again because they are exposed to the same exhaustion and lack of food, so they attract the tuberculosis again, and then they come back to me again. So this was a very, very difficult years for me, and it opened my eyes. In fact, working as a chest physician for some years among those poor men and women, I never forget them. This opened my eyes to life, to real life, and helped me in writing also, in writing. So these were the major troubles, and also many other, I think, in my medical life. It's not easy to be a doctor in a very poor country and to examine patients. When I was working as a physician in the village, when I went to my village, I used to examine, I sit like that, and in front of me patients queuing 100 patients or 150, and I have to examine them in 2 hours. So it was very, very difficult, and very agonizing, very painful. And also there are many stories about death, about mistakes of doctors, yes, mistakes, how many doctors did mistakes, and all that.
Quali sono le cose più dolorose in cui si è trovata come medico, più dolorose? Gli episodi più dolorosi.
There were many human stories, especially like, for instance, when the wife is sick of tuberculosis. I remember a couple who came to me. The wife had tuberculosis, but the husband didn't know that she had tuberculosis. And me, as a physician, I have to tell him, because he may be infected. If he doesn't know and he has continuous relation, he may be infected. But I was afraid to tell him because he may divorce her, because if he knows she is tuberculous, he can divorce her. So the wife came to me and said, please don't tell him that I have tuberculosis because he will leave me. So I was torn whether to tell the husband to protect him, to tell him the truth so that he is not infected, or to hide the truth so that she will not be affected and divorced, And then I told him the truth, of course. But anyway, there were many, many moments when I didn't know how to judge what to do, such a human. And there are many, like I wrote in my book, Women and Sex, and in my memoirs also, in my diary, and in my autobiography, when they bring me a bride who did not bleed on the wedding night, and she comes with her husband, the new husband, and he tell me, please examine her and tell me whether she is a virgin or not. And I remember I lied. She was not virgin. I told him she's virgin, you know, because he will kill her. They will kill her. So I said, no, she's a virgin, but she has an elastic hymen. So you have sometimes to lie in order to protect the life of people as a physician. So you are between your conscious, what I call absolute truth, that I have to say the truth in an absolute situation, or to hide the truth to protect the life of a young woman.
Ha avuto anche qualche soddisfazione come medico? Qualche soddisfazione veramente importante?
Yeah, great. I think in the medical profession, you feel like a semi-god, you know. People look to you that you have life in your hand. You are giving them life. You are giving them health. So you feel a lot of power, a lot of authority. But I didn't like the medical profession. No, it's not for me. I am not, my constitution is not to be a doctor. My constitution is to be a musician, a painter, a writer. My constitution, I am more oriented to artistic expression. And I hate hospitals, and I hate sickness. I like to be with healthy people. I don't like to be with sick people. I like to be with very healthy people, because I'm a sportswoman. I play sports. So I want to be with sport people, very physically fit people. So I'm not really fit for the medical profession, but I enjoyed a lot of this, satisfaction. You are satisfied with yourself because you know a lot, and people come to you and they look to you as if you know everything, you know, so it's sometimes satisfactory, yeah.
Qualcosa comunque di questa esperienza come medico poi è servita anche per la sua scrittura, per i suoi libri, non soltanto per un libro ma anche per altri. Qualcosa delle storie che ha avuto modo di incontrare, no? Di sentire, di vivere nella professione medica. Qualcosa è entrato poi nella sua scrittura?
Yes, of course. I think I never regret being a doctor, never. Though I went to the medical college because I obeyed my father. My dream was to be a dancer, a musician, a writer, but my father told me, you should go to the medical college and be a doctor, because you will have a lot of money, and it's a very good, it's the best students who go to the medical college. So I never regret, because I write. It's very important for writers, creative writers, even musicians. Painters, I think painters should study the body and dissect the body in order to paint, and sculptors should study the body. A novelist also should dissect the body and know where is the heart. If I'm going to speak about a love story, I must know where is the heart and how the heart looks physically, you know. So to study medicine, to study anatomy, to study physiology, biology, to live with people who are sick and poor and dying, to see death every day. For me, death and life became one. I do not separate between death and life. This is my medical experience. So it's reality, it's blood. I lived with blood. As a surgeon, with blood. Blood is reality. It's not fiction, you know. So this is very, very important, a very rich experience for writers, painters, musicians to know the body. And the body is not separate from the mind and the spirit, so I never regret that.
10 minuti di intervallo.